In this recording, I'm going to be talking about update queries. Now, the book and the homework assignments don't include any update queries because they, in a way, can be dangerous. So if you are not terribly interested in this additional information, you can skip the rest of the recording. But I'm going to provide the information because I find the update queries to be very, very handy. To create an update, Access allows you to create queries that are beyond select queries. All the queries that we've done to this point are select queries. Select the data that meets these criteria. Show me just these fields sorted in this order. Those are called select queries. Access allows you to create different kinds of queries. So I'm going to go to design mode. I'm going to use the query builder on orders. Close that. And notice there's some other tables here that we can create. I'm going to talk about update, but once you understand update queries are very similar to using all these other ones are very similar. You can create a make table query. The make table query allows you to take the answers from one query and turn into a completely different table. I've used that to create temporary tables that are then used to generate forms. Makes life a little bit easier. But I'm not going to talk about them here. They're append queries. Take the data from this query, append them to another table. I've seen that used for archiving. Go find all the records that are older than a year and append them to this archives table that has all the old records in it. Could do something like that. Update queries allow you to change the data in a table based on some parameters that you designate. We'll talk about cross-tabbed queries in the next recording. And finally, there's a delete query that allows you to delete records that meet the criteria that you specify. Those are rarely used. I'm not a big fan of deleting data once you've got it. If the data is 15 years old, it must have been valuable once upon a time, and you might want to go back to it historically to compare trends, etc. So I don't do a lot of delete, but you can do it. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but dangerous. In this unit, we're going to talk about update queries. And before I forget, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call it query update personal. We've discovered that adults don't order our personal pizzas anymore. It's mostly kids that order them, so we're going to change the category name. Okay. So that we're now going to have large, medium, small, and child pizzas. So I have 400 and some odd orders in my database. Instead of going through and finding each one of those and manually trying to change them, I'm going to do an update query that says go find every occurrence of personal pizza and change it to child. Now, I don't necessarily have to do that either. Right? I can just in the future no longer accept any pizza orders that say personal and leave all the personal ones in the past, but we've decided that we're going to take them all back out and change them to child because I need to do an update query. One of the things I recommend you do first is make sure your criteria works. So I'm going to put in an order date here and the size, and I want to see a size personal. Now this one's pretty simple, so pretty hard to screw that up, but I want to make sure that all I get is personal pizzas, and sure enough, there's 106 of them. That's good to know. There's 106 personal pizzas. So that works. Don't really need the order date, but I've now verified and found out how many records I expect to change. If you do this wrong, you could end up changing all the records to child, and once you've done an update, that's the one thing to recognize about update queries. Once you tell it to run, there's no undo. You can't go back and put them back again. So be very careful with these update queries. I'm now going to tell Access that no, I don't want a select query anymore. I want an update query. And notice that the values here on the edges change. Okay. I still have a criteria of personal. What do I want to update them to? Notice I can put in multiple criteria with an or clause. Okay. If I had kids pizzas and personal pizzas and I want to change them all to child pizzas, okay, then I could say personal or kid. Right? But we don't have those kids, so I want to change it to child. Two buttons, the view button and the run button. I've been kind of using them interchangeably, and when you're writing select queries, they are interchangeable. They both do the same thing. But when you're doing an update or a delete or a make table, these are actually, the view is actually a preview window. So I'm going to click on that for a preview. It's not going to make any changes. It's just going to show me the records that are going to change. All these personals are going to change. And there's 106 of them. Well, that's exactly what I expect. So that seems to be okay. Go back to design view. Now I'm pretty confident that this is what I want to do, so I'm going to hit run. And it says it's going to update 106 rows. Yeah, that sounds good. Yes. And now I get an error. And if you read this carefully, you'll see that 0 fields were changed. There was a conversion. No, there weren't any conversion errors. There weren't any key violations. There weren't any lock violations, but there were 106 records due to validation rules. So I tried to change stuff, but I have validation rules from Unit 1, my Unit 1 recordings, that say your pizzas have to be in this list. All right, so I'm going to save this and come back to it in a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to go into the orders table and design view. Okay. And remember, for the size, we designated that it had to be in large, medium, small, personal. Well, I'm just changing that, so my validation doesn't correlate. So I needed to do this first. Child. And you might not remember, but in Unit 1 recordings, we also created a lookup for this that includes those and said it has to be limited to the list. So this also needs to be changed. And I could actually take all that validation out because this lookup overrides all that validation. So this is what's very, very important here, that I change all this stuff. All right, so now, hopefully, let's save that. Do you want to apply these rules to, yeah, go ahead and do that. No, I don't want to, because this rule will not apply because we said child. It has to be one of these. We don't want to apply it. We're going to have our query make the changes, so we should be okay. So no, I'm not going to test these against the existing data. I know they're going to fail because you got a bunch of personals out there yet. So now I can close this because I've saved that. Okay, and now I can try running this again. Is this my update query? Looks like it. Oh, got to go to the design tab here and then we can run it. I don't need to preview it because things shouldn't have changed. 106, yep. Don't really need to do that, but it's good to be safe. And run it. And it says 106, good. Yes. And now it says we didn't update them all. 7 of them failed due to validation rule. Well, how could they fail? I'm not sure. So do we want to make the changes to the other 99? Yes, go ahead and make the changes to the other 99. Now let's go take a look. And again, I'm going to leave this alone. Let's go take a look in table orders. And what sizes do we have? Blanks, child, oops, somehow I got a lowercase c in there. Didn't mean to do that. Well, I could do an update, and I will in a second, that changes child to capital child. But notice there's still some personal ones left. Well, let's take a look at those 7 records. Personal. Why didn't it change that? They're spelled right. There's no extra spaces. Well, let's change it here then. Child. And go to the next one, and I get an error saying coupon value must be less than the order total. Uh-oh, is that the problem? Okay. Then, here, we have a coupon that is bigger than the order total. So somehow some bad data got in there, and because of that, it wouldn't change my personal. I could manually go through and change every one of these, but I asked the boss, and the boss said, you know what, those must have been a mistake. Don't know what happened. Let's change them all of those coupons to 50 cents. Now, I could manually go in and change them, but what if there had been 20, 30 of them? That would be a pain. Maybe we should do an update query. Oops, I'm going to cancel my changes to that record. Cancel the changes, and then try to close this. Okay, and now I'm going to do a new query again. I'm going to do an update query. Okay, based on orders, close. I want to make it an update, and I want to change the coupon value. Update it to 50 cents. Where? Where the coupon value is greater than the order. You can't do that. What you cannot do in your criteria is look at 2 fields at the same time. That can only be done in table validation. But I happen to know, because of what I just did, that all of those have a size of personal. So I can take advantage of that here and say where the size is personal. There should be 7 of them. So let's see what happens if I run this. There are 7 of them. Make my changes. Close that query. I could save it, but I'm not going to bother because I shouldn't ever need this again. Okay. And then go back to the orders table and just show me the size personal, because there's just a few of those left. Oops. Personal. And check all their coupon values, and sure enough, they're all 50 cents. So I've saved myself a little bit of time there. Close that. And now I should be able to run this query again to say change all the personals to lowercase to uppercase child. So that was my mistake in the other one. This one should have been upper. It doesn't matter when you're comparing, but this is the value that I want to change it to. Once again, I'm going to run. I expect 7 because there were 7 that didn't get changed before. There are 7. This time it runs, doesn't have any complaints. Finally, I want to change my capitalization on the child records with lowercase c's. All right, let's go back to the orders table. Okay, and what do we got in here? Notice now the personal is gone and child is lowercase. That's just because that's where the first one is. So I'm going to change them all using my query. Back to design view of my query. And wherever it's child, change it to uppercase child. Update query, run it. I expect that to be 99 records, 0 records. Where the size is, oops, put something else in there. I don't know where that came from. A little extra character there. Oh, forgot to take out the last letter, personal. 106, it's doing them all because, again, the comparison is not case sensitive. It's going to do them all, so it's even going to take the capital ones and change them to capital, but it should give me the results that I want. And finally, open the table again, and now they're all capitalized. And if I drop this down, my list is capitalized. So those are examples of update queries. You can use them to change large chunks of data. Other things I've done with them is added, and this wouldn't happen in most normal databases, but in my sample databases, I like the dates to be fairly current. Instead of going through 425 pizza order dates, I just add a year to every one of those once a year using an update query. Doesn't take very long, adds a year using the date add function, I think it is, and I update them all. Real world, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that, but this is an example of how you could use updates to change a value that's already in the data.